Excuse me, sir, that bottle's not quite historically accurate, is it? Just like, isn't it? Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Healeyverse Creations, a place where pretty much anything could be next. As we're going to prove today, by customising a couple of drinking flasks. Let's get into that. As you know, recently we've been doing a lot of leather stuff because it's kind of the easiest thing to work with at the moment, and since I'm kind of on a bit of a journey to be able to make bigger and better things, it helps to make smaller things sometimes. Just saying. The first thing that I should mention before I get into anything with this is I'm making two of them. I'm making one for me and one for Katie, so I'm going to be doing everything the same, just in different colours. The first thing we had to do was pick a couple of flasks that we were going to use to customise. Found these two canister looking ones from Poundland. They were like £6, pretty cheap. We decided to go for these because as I was looking at them I realised they'd be a good shape for the kind of idea that I was going for. I want this to be able to be taken back apart again so that the canister inside can be washed and cleaned, and you know, if the top should break we can put a new one on it. I don't want anything to be, once it's damaged forever. First thing I did was take a piece of paper, wrap it around the canister, mark my lines down it, figure out where that was. I don't think I recorded any of that process, I apologise, but basically what I ended up with was this shape. And from there it was pretty simple, because all that's going to happen with this is once you've got this cone looking shape, it's almost like a sleeve but it's slightly tighter at the top than the bottom to match the canister. So then what will happen is I'll unscrew the lid to slide the sleeve over the canister, and then when the lid's screwed back on it shouldn't be able to slide back off because it's more narrow at the top than at the bottom. That's my hope. And then once I've got that cut to size, next thing is just stitching it together. What I also decided to do first was run a cross stitch all along this top edge, just to give it something so it wasn't just loose leather on the edge. I didn't want to seam it or anything like that. Like I said, I wanted it to be relatively simple, not many stages to it, so I just whipped a stitch through all that edge and then cross stitched it together. Plus it adds a bit of detail by going for the contrasting colour and nice whiter stitch on the darker leather, darker stitch on the whiter leather. Worked pretty well. But yeah, as you can see, we went for these nice contrasting colours with the brown leather with the white stitching and the cream leather with the red stitching. Katie decided to go for, and girly, but it looks pretty. I'll give her that, it does look nice. I'm not mad about it at all. So once I got that cross stitching all in around that top side, it was just a case of also cross stitching them down the seam and closing it up, making it into one full sleeve, and with that, that's the first section done. I could essentially just leave it at that, maybe even throwing a cross stitch on the bottom. You'd maybe see the bottom of the canister, but overall could leave it at that. Not going to. The next thing I had to do was cut out my paper templates for the base of this thing, because I didn't want it to fit the bottom of the canister, I wanted it to fit the bottom of the width of the leather. So I had to wait until it was on so I could get an exact measurement, take it all the way around, make my circle from that. It was worth waiting to do. Always make paper templates. One thing that I've realised as I've gotten further into this journey, because cutting out leather and realising it's wrong first, ain't it? Paper templates, guys. Be sensible. Once I'd done that, I had my circle. All it was just transferring it onto a piece of leather. What I decided to do was go for a piece of leather that was a similar colour to the cap, just so that it visually appealing from a distance. It made it less obvious that it was plastic and leather, made it look a bit more rustic all round. You'll see when we get there. Another thing that's just worth mentioning is when it comes to me cutting out these two bases in leather, I did decide to go with 2 layers just so that there's a bit of extra support from the bottom, so if it ever does get dropped or if the string snaps or something falls and hits the ground, hopefully there's a little bit more padding between the canister and the floor. Every finger crossed. And then it was kind of just a rinse and repeat. Once I'd cut myself a strip, which ended up being about 30mm deep, it was then just a case of punching holes all the way around both sides and across both edges, run myself a nice cross stitch, just again a loose cross stitch that holds the end in and gives it a nice close around the seam, and then cross stitching it to the base. One thing I am thinking about potentially doing at a later date, and please if there's anyone actually there, leave it in the comments, what would be the best way to try and waterproof this cap? Or is there no way, and would I be better off doing it differently? Or is there something I can line it with? I know beeswax is quite good for sealing things up, but I don't know if I necessarily trust it to this, because my thought is I could potentially turn these bases into little cups, so that if you were encountering someone on your travels and they needed water, you could top it up and give them rather than having them swig from your canteen. Just a thought. Once we've got them stitched together, that's pretty much it. The base slots straight on over the cylinder, and that is essentially a fully sealed, fully personalised LARP flask. I'm not going to go so far as to say medieval flask, because I doubt you'd find anything in history that looks anything like this, but for a LARP and stuff, just for something that looks concealable and rustic enough, I hope. Again, let me know in the comments if you think that this wouldn't fly. Personally, I'm just hoping that it's good enough. Just one final cherry on top of the customised flask cake is I'm going to take some cordage and wrap it, just because. Why not? To be honest, it's also going to help hold everything together, and it's also going to give me a point at which I can tie this onto a belt, tie onto a backpack, restring it around itself. Possibilities are endless. So I'm just going to do this simple twisting around it. It's literally a case of you go around the bottom once, cross it through itself, back round the other way, and then what I do, once it comes and meets back round to where it first started, is I curl it around itself twice, pull it back round to the other side, and just so on until you get to the top. Then what I'm going to do, luckily this cap has a nice little hoop, almost like it was made for me to tie a string through. So I'm just going to send both sides of the string through that and cinch the knot shut, and then I'm going to tie a little knot just so far up the cordage so that I have this nifty little point where you can just pull that up through your belt, drop the flask down into the loop that it leaves, and you're done. And we have 2 LARP bottles, 2 LARP canisters, 2 LARP drinks receptacles. Call them what you will. I'm going to call them awesome. Kind of speak for themselves, don't they? And like I say, I think they look rustic enough, don't you? I mean, obviously when you get up and look close, you can see they've got the little tabs and stuff. Imagine you're running around sweating in a field, you're thirsty, you're dying, you pull your drink out to have a swig, and someone comes run over and goes, "Excuse me, sir, that bottle's not quite historically accurate, is it?" And just like, isn't it? Someone's going to have to let me know before we go to a LARP, because it's what I'm going to be turning up with. I can pretty much 100% guarantee you that. If you have anything to say, by all means, please let us know in the comments down below. Obviously, if you haven't already, leave a like on the video, hit the subscribe button. By all means, turn on the little notifications bell so that it will let you know whenever we post new stuff. We're doing better at keeping on top of doing it weekly at this point, especially with having the other channel running in the background, the Lord I mentioned. If you haven't been, check it out. Hoping to have some new stuff going on there soon. That's been this one. I hope you enjoyed my little flask making video. I know I enjoyed making them and they look pretty cool. A little bit underwhelming maybe after the sword frog and the coin purses, but sometimes you just got to do the basic things in order to keep up the skill. This one wasn't much, but it was a lot of sewing. Look no further than Skill Tree to know how much people get on with hand sewing. It's not the most fun of things, especially once you've done enough of it. And when you're just doing the same thing again and again and again and again, not only can it get a little tedious, but it can also get a little prickly. And the tips of your fingers, they just start to poke holes. The back of the needles just likes to find a way to stab you. Totally worth it though, because... With that, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Pretty much wraps up everything. I very much look forward to seeing you on the next one, whatever that could be.